quite often when we dip into the toolbox, which is the segment of the program where we explore equipment and innovation and technology, we're usually talking about clubs or golf balls or those things that we more often directly connect to improving our games. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different, because if you are an all-weather player, you know the importance of being ready to play in all kinds of weather, especially for those of you who are part of the Midwest like I am. So I'm happy to welcome in Bryan Finnerty, who is the CEO of Galway Bay. Some fantastic rain gear, all-weather performance gear. And Bryan, I just had the chance, as I was recording a review video of your product, I just had the chance to put it all on, and I got to tell you, that's really good stuff, man. I mean, this is top of the line quality all-weather gear. So take us back to when you came up with it and what Galway Bay is all about.
Well, boy, that could be a 3-hour segment, but I'll keep it short. Really, it started about 10 years ago, and Terry Prilliman, who's our founder, lives in Atlanta, but traveled the entire Eastern Seaboard. He's a golf nut and ran into, like all of us, the inclement days. And when you're on golf trips, you don't get the choice of sitting one out. And so he thought, I want some all-weather gear that doesn't cost $600 a jacket, and certainly doesn't cost $99 that's stuffed in the side compartment of your bag and you take it out and the thing leaks after the second hole. So he really started the quest to getting some functional rain gear, also with pants. Kind of our signature item is a pair of pants that you don't pull up over another pair of pants. These are literally slacks that you put a belt through. At the risk of standing up right now, as I said, I'm just coming off the golf course wearing my Galway Bays. They keep the rain off, they keep the wind out, they're light, they're functional, and that was really Terry's vision 10 years ago. To your point, they're a very technical fabric and very technical outerwear pieces of garments. So we've sought, literally around the globe. We've looked through South America, North America, China, Japan, Australia. We constantly scour the planet looking for the best technical fabrics that, again, are light, flexible. Our current products are 4-way stretch. So we really try to make it so you not only look good, but most importantly, play good. Because if you look good and shoot terrible, your wallet's going to be a little lighter anyway. So not the way you want to come off the golf course. So we try to blend the two. And the genesis of that was just, play good and look good. And 10 years later, we think we're doing a good job of that.
I'm one of the few human beings who plays the game who has been under-equipped with rain gear for a long time. Maybe there are more of us than I thought. But I remember years ago, in fact, 2006, so 14 years ago, I went to Ryder Cup over in Dublin and combined that with some golf in Ireland. Well, what kind of a moron goes to Ireland without good rain gear? This one right here.
It's self-included.
I remember being out in some really, really, the kind of weather where the starter says, "Oh, you're going out in it, are you?" I mean, like, if he's saying that, we are in a world of hurt. So take us back, let's say, to that era, 2006. Between then and now, we know that technology has evolved incredibly in every part of the game. How has it evolved in rain gear?
I think the most important place is that not everything has to be Goretex. And kudos to Goretex back in the day, really came up with the first bulletproof rainwear, right? So, I mean, you could take a fire hydrant to it. The challenge was it didn't breathe from the inside. So as much as you were dry on the outside, even in 42-degree sideways rain, like you guys probably saw in Dublin, and I've taken a few trips to Ireland myself, northern and southern, when you're sweating on the inside, it's just as miserable. So yeah, you could stay dry on the outside, but you're sort of swampy on the inside. So technology today is really, it allows the fabric to breathe from the inside. Those pores open up as the heat basically makes it expand, but it's a one-way filter. And, that's really the core to our business, is making sure that whether it's 20,000 or 30,000 waterproof, which really means it can take 30,000 microns of water, not to get too technical, over the course of an hour, and it still doesn't let any come through, not even one. That's the high point of the fabric. And then we have really what's called 3-2. So it's 3 small layers with 2 thin insulated layers that all stretch in 4 different directions. So you talk about the evolution of fabric and technology. I mean, it really has come quite a long way. And I think over the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to see even more, which is you know, again, in an apparel business, you can talk about fashion, which is always changing, but the function is really important too. And as you know, from playing in all kinds of crazy weather, and we had it here in Michigan this weekend, cold, a little misty, a little rainy, windy. It's nice to be able to play and honestly just be comfortable based on the layers you're wearing underneath and not feel restricted like you're making a straight jacket swing. So
Well,
lots of good stuff.
yeah, I'm glad you said that because that's the other concern of every golfer, and especially bigger golfers like me. You don't want to feel like you're in a straitjacket. And at the same time, if you're out there wearing parachute pants and what
Right.
looks like a poncho, then it doesn't do you any good either. So that breathability needs to be accompanied by flexibility. And that's one of the things that I most appreciated about what I tried on from Galway Bay. I could move. I can move
Yeah.
it. It was really, really light. I didn't feel like I was a wrestler trying to make weight. So I wasn't all overheated on the inside.
Yep.
And at the same time, I can move around. I would have to think that an awful lot of trial and error goes into that kind of development. What's the development process like? Are there test dummies, so to speak? Are there guys like me who are willing to go out and try on a prototype?
I'll leave the term test dummies to the guys like me on the inside, because we've tried a lot of stuff that, again, looks fantastic. You get it. We literally do a seltzer and a fire hose type test where we're blasting stuff at each other, which is fun because we can do it in an environment that if you do get wet, you're taking it off and going out. But I'd say most of the feedback does come from our users. And over a decade of time, we've got our insiders. And the great thing is you don't have to have had 15 sets of Galway Bay gear. You can literally go to galwaybaygolf.com and sign up to be one of our insiders. And probably 4 or 5 times a year, we're sending out a note saying, hey, we've got 10 extra large jackets. Who's willing to give these a try? Or I've got a pair of, 4 pair of 36 32s. They're totally brand new, free to anybody who wants to test them. The only thing we ask in return is some feedback. Or if you've got a current pair of pants, what do you like about them? What don't you like about them? And I think that feedback has always been kind of part of our calling card. Not that Adidas and Nike and the other competitors don't do that. I'm sure they do. But when people respond, they'll get a message from our COO, Mike Brown, or oftentimes for me, I'll just call somebody up and say, hey, I saw you bought a whole set of gear. You said you needed it in time because you were heading over to Ireland. COVID times aside, you just got back from the trip, break it down for me. And oftentimes these guys will send photo after photo of their buddies, hunkered down behind a burn, and they're out there fighting the weather. And so they help us, right? But the development process does take about 6 to 9 months. Again, Adidas, Nike, and some of the other biggies, they're probably on a 2 or 3 year time cycle because of their volume. So they're really planning for things. And I'd say feedback wise, we may not see their gear for a couple of years. We're able to look at it in June and put that into a holiday buying pattern and really see it the first of the year. So I love the evolution, how nimble we are as a small company, but it does take about 6 to 9 months and lots of feedback.
Yeah, where'd the name come from, Galway Bay?
Terry's got a couple of old folksy stories about it, but the truth of it is, it really reminded him of, he had seen some photos and video from some of his buddies in Atlanta who had gone to Galway Bay to play, and much like what you saw here in Dublin, and I think any extended trips, you tend to get 1 or 2 of these days at least where guys are just fighting it back. And he thought, if I could build gear that would withstand that, right, Galway Bay and Ireland on a regular basis, then, you sort of get that iconic feel of Ireland itself. You think about sort of foul weather gear and what you've got to live up to. And so I think it was a culmination of all of that. And it just resonated. You say Galway Bay, and it does have that sort of, foul weather Irish, man, if I put this on, I can probably withstand anything, whether I'm at Bandon Dunes or Whistling Straits or anywhere else, right? So yeah, that's kind of where it started.
So the other part of this equation, I'm not trying to tell you as if you don't know, you're the boss, but it's finding the right price point that consumers will dive in.
Absolutely.
And
yep.
You mentioned earlier, you don't want to go on the super low end. First, it costs a lot of money to make the stuff. And secondly, yep. I used to have the $70 rain gear, and it was basically glorified trash bags with what felt like fur lining in there. So it was not good. So much like the rest of golf equipment, like golf balls are priced sometimes at $15 a dozen and sometimes at
yep.
$60 a dozen. There's a difference in there. How did you settle into where you want to be in the golf consumer marketplace?
Good question. And much like the testing, a bit of trial and error. We started at the very expensive end because we're doing runs of 500 and 1,000 pieces, not 50,000 and 100,000 like the bigger guys. So the cost per unit is a bit more expensive for us. And we found that although the product evolved there and it was great, we weren't getting enough volume to really talk about where we wanted to be. We came up with a couple of short sleeve versions that were much like you and I have probably had stuffed in many bags after, you know, XYZ outing, right? You get it as the tea gift. And the first time you take it out, you're like, I know why it was in the side compartment of my bag. We've made that error too. And I think where we found our sweet spot is the people that are willing to pay for quality but don't want to overpay for a name, that's a good fit for us. So we'd say, look, when you're buying a jacket that at retail is $299 and you're going to spend $200, $199 for a pair of pants, you're probably pretty serious about the game, but you don't care whether it has 3 stripes on the side or it has a big G on the side, you know, for one of our competitors. You just want it to be waterproof. You want it to work. And you know that you're going to be actually part of kind of an insider crew and a niche brand. And it's a really good fit for us.
Is your dream to have tour players put this in their rotation? I mean, it's kind of a strange pursuit at times because you're then counting on that rare moment when A, your guy's in contention, and B, he's playing in the rain, and C, he's doing it on TV. But yeah, is that what your goal is? Or are you just after the everyday golfer who has a passion for the game?
You know, it's a great question. And I think the golf industry has a lot of history with this aspirational, you know, side of the bag tour sponsor with a sponsored guy. We have quite a few guys and caddies on tour that wear our gear, but there's a piece of black tape over the Galway Bay part, and we're okay with that. I know what it costs to get those guys. I played 11 years of professional soccer, so I've been on the other side of that equation, getting those endorsement deals. Certainly not like the PGA Tour guys, but I do understand the economics of it. It just doesn't make sense for us. If you remember when Tony Romo hit his shot off the hospitality deck at the AT&T last year when it was pouring rain, if you zoom in on his pants, he's got a pair of Galway Bay pants on. And so I think most of us know who his sponsors are, but he chose to wear a pair of Galway Bay pants. And he bought those pants. His dad actually bought a set for himself and a set for Tony. We think that speaks to when someone will pay to wear our stuff, it works, right? And it just frankly works like that. There's quite a few senior tour guys and tour caddies who are wearing our stuff, again, with the stuff blacked out. Look, we can't promote it, but we know it works. So our goal really is about influencers, the people who are actually playing the game of golf, whether they're having fun or trying to make a mini tour. And when they're playing in the rain on a Friday or a Saturday and trying to make cut to get, you know, $700 that pays for the next trip, we actually think that's more important than paying a guy 6 figures to put our stuff on 3 times a year if it might be raining and if there's, to your point, if there's TV coverage and if he's in contention. So we'd rather fish where the fish are and just say, hey, if you love our gear, we'll figure out a way that, you know, we can make sense for everybody. But we've just had a lot more traction doing it that way because we know that people know the difference, right? Again, we could try to buy some of that tour panache and presence. I'm just not sure that at the end of the day, number one, we really can't compete with the FootJoys of the world, let's be clear, or the Nikes. They have those guys for a very good reason. We want people who love our gear that wear it because they want to. And, you know, so far so good with that. So that's definitely more of our path.
Well, I'm sure what you said has perked up the attention of some of our audience because we always like to give golf fans a peek behind the curtain. And part of that curtain back there is the real estate that's for sale on a player. You know, it's everywhere. It's becoming more NASCAR-like than it ever was before. And I'm not blaming the players for it. If you can get the revenue, go get the revenue. You don't have any guaranteed performance contracts, so go get some money if you can for a logo. But it's interesting to hear you talk about how they actually go to the extent of putting black tape over something, because if I'm an Adidas player or if I'm a Callaway player or if I'm a whatever player and I like your stuff better, I certainly don't want to risk my 6 or maybe 7-figure contract by having my tour agent say, what is that? What are they paying? So I totally get it. And it might be interesting for our audience to kind of think that through a little bit. Not everything that you see is as it seems when you're watching on television. There are some players over the years who have been known to be playing clubs, irons from
Oh,
a
for sure.
completely different brand, but they just stamped their sponsor's brand on the backside in case there's that low angle shot. So it happens all the time. Meanwhile, back in the real world where all of us kind of exist and we just love the game. And, I know you just came in for being able to play with your son. We know that coming up in January now, the annual PGA merchandise show has been basically scrapped. I know they're talking about turning it into a virtual version. More power to them. I hope it works. It certainly can't be to the same level.
Right.
What did the show mean to you, and what will the change in the show's plans mean to you at Galway Bay and as well as at V1 Sports, which is also under your umbrella?
Yeah, in the spirit of staying behind the curtain here, I'll be quite frank with you. V1 especially, we've got 10,000 golf pros in the U.S., another 5,000 around the globe, and you look at about 70% market share in the instruction space. So if anybody's got a screaming desire to be at that PGA show, it would be us. It's an expensive venture, and there were not a lot of tears shed when we found that this year was going to be a break. For the most part, we know who we're going to talk to. We know how to help our golf pros give better lessons and get more connected to players. Quite frankly, it's about speaking with a louder megaphone to consumers, which this show is not directed at, no disregard to the show. So for us, it's really about, quite honestly, it's just circling the wagons and spending more time with the pros for V1. And again, for Galway Bay, we're not selling into pro shops. We sell direct to consumers. So one of the ways we can keep that price point where it is today is we don't have to sell it into a pro shop and then have them double mark it up again. We think that's a huge benefit to consumers. Again, whether you and I are out playing around today, or if we were playing on Thursday when it was definitely spit and rain and a bit colder, hey, posting that on social, we found that people say, I look a lot like Bill, or I look a lot like Bryan. I'm just trying to get it around out there, not lose bucks to my buddy. I'm not trying to make a cut for a Sunday final. So if I can go out and play golf and have a good time, and this is my day off of work, or when I've got no Zoom calls in today's environment, I'd rather put on Galway Bay, to be honest with you. So not being at the show for us, it will be different. I think it will be for all of us, but for our two brands, V1 and for Galway Bay, quite frankly, it's going to be a cost savings and actually a way for us to refocus on spending time with consumers, which is really our bread and butter anyway.
Well, here's hoping that as we lead into the holiday season, that those who are always searching for the best gift to buy for the golfer in their life might consider this kind of gift that can last them for years and years. It's so much better than golf balls or that kind of thing. Now you can make an investment in the craziness that is golf, because there are a lot of people who are listening to our conversation who do want to play in the rain and the cold weather. And so maybe that's a great a gift idea that can help equip them better to do that. So thanks for the peek behind the curtain, Bryan, at Galway Bay. And hopefully a lot of folks in our audience will turn your way.
Yeah, what I would leave with is, again, we talk about the price point, and I know that's not for everybody. At the same time, like you, like me, I've got a discerning wallet when it comes to whether it's travel or gear. I'd also like to make sure the stuff lives off the golf course. And I think if you look at apparel today, if it's only specifically meant to be on the golf course, it's tough to make any investment in golf gear, regardless of what you're wearing. But when that golf gear can be a nice top that I can, a button-down shirt or a dress shirt that might fit both sides. Our rain gear, we'd say, look, it also makes it out to a soccer game. It makes it out to a football game. It is something that's not going to be just for those dozen rainy days of golf a year. It'll certainly suit you well, and that was the desire. But there's probably 40 other days, 50 other days a year that you are going to be somewhere where you'd like to wear it and not look like, again, you put on a poncho. I'd like to have a button-down shirt and put a Galway Bay jacket over the top, or a pair of slacks that can avoid the rain if I'm going out to a soccer game and then have to run in for a lunch, that I'm not stripping off pants and putting on pants. I just wear the same thing. So it does have a life outside of the game. And I think that's one of the things that brings our price point to most people, where they'd say, for all the use I'm going to get out of it, this actually does become an investment. So to your point, it doesn't live for one season. It really has a nice life that is worth wearing. So I'm a little partial to that for sure, but I think if you go to galwaybaygolf.com and just look at the gear, you're going to see something different than you would many of the other brands. It's literally just stuff it in your bag for golf.